how this cult got very close to ending the world. (1984), Tokyo, Japan. Coming off the devastating events of World War II, this nation had become the focus of the world in a different aspect. During this time, Japan was having an economic boom, becoming the central power in manufacturing and technological innovation. Culturally, Japan was also an uncomfortable place, where people were enjoying expressing themselves and living lives of extreme material wealth. Then comes this guy. Born Chizuo Matsumoto in 1955, he was a partially blind acupuncturist and a failed pharmacy owner who had been arrested for selling fake snake oil cures. He was an outsider in Japanese society, poor, visually impaired, and rejected by the elite universities he desperately wanted to attend. But despite all his shortcomings, he had one gift: charisma. He rebranded, growing a beard and changing his name to Shoko Asahara, and started a yoga venture, taking up his previously failed venture of snake oil sales, but not selling health. He was selling superpowers. He made a number of claims: that he could levitate, that he could read minds, and that he could heal the ill. He claimed he was the first person to achieve true enlightenment since the Buddha himself. And nowadays, it would just be called schizo posting, but back then, if you were charismatic enough, you could literally lead a world-changing religion or a bunch of people to a violent death. But I digress. Shoko Asahara spoke directly to the plight of the average Japanese salaryman at the time, working long, arduous weeks, making good money, but being unfulfilled spiritually. He offered an escape. He said plainly that the material world was evil and that society as a whole was doomed and he was their only savior. And this is the most dangerous part. His followers weren't just lost teenagers or curious salarymen, but he actually sought out the intellectual elite of Japan at the time. Top-of-the-line heart surgeons, physicists, and chemical engineers from Japan's top institutions, preying perfectly on their disillusionment. While having a base of logic, they sought a spiritual angle, and Shoko fulfilled this perfectly, stating to them that their science was not enough. They needed his spiritual powers, and with this, they, and by proxy him, could redesign the world. He called this group Amshin Rikyo, or Supreme Truth. By the early 90s, he had thousands of followers, and over $1 billion in assets. But the persona of yoga teacher, spiritual aficionado was wearing thin. Asahara, in a bid to animate his followers even more, foretold of incoming apocalypse, of biblical proportions, a horrific war that only his followers would prevail from. And he knew the world wasn't ending, so he decided to speed that up. It's at this point in the story that events in the ideology itself go from being potentially classified as eccentricity to becoming a threat to Japanese society as a whole. These events upcoming sealed the group's eventual fate. The opening salvo in this transformation, from a weird yoga group to paramilitary organization, occurred in 1989. A lawyer named Satsumi Sakamoto, well known for action against Japan's many cults, began investigating this strange group. After a few months of investigation, Satsumi discovered a number of shocking facts about the group. And from this, he authored a lawsuit with which he would bring Shoko's group down completely. An interview with Sakamoto was taped by the Tokyo Broadcasting System network regarding his findings and his efforts to fight against the group for the victims and victims' families. For whatever reason, the unedited, unanonymized portion of the interview was shown to the group, and they promptly discovered the location and identity of their largest critic. On the 4th of November 1989, 6 cult members broke into the Sakamoto family home at 3 a.m. They were on explicit orders to stop this lawsuit at any cost, and with the explicitness and veracity like which the order was given, they brutally murdered the lawyer, Tsutsumi Sakamoto, his wife, Sakoto Sakamoto, and 14-month-old infant son, Tatsuhiko. To cover their tracks, they took the bodies and scattered them across Japan in drums, and destroyed all forensic evidence. This first act, while still brutal, pales in comparison to the rest of their actions, but this one is the most important. It shows they were willing, as a group, to become complicit in murder, and at this point, there was no turning back. This is where the group's true reign of terror began. After the events involving the lawyer, the group slowly became more and more sinister, action by action. And to further the agenda of the apocalypse, the group began devising ways to cause as much destruction as possible. With this large base of devoted members and wealth, the group decided to begin building, provisioning, and purchasing a large number of buildings across Japan. And strangely enough, a single outpost in the remote Australian outback, which will be revisited later in this video. Seeking more power, and to further isolate the group, Shoko decided that militarization was the best course of action, creating branches and sub-branches of quote-unquote ministries regarding science, construction, and intelligence. Also aiding in this goal, the group set up facilities to illegally produce firearms, attempting to create 1,000 Kalashnikov-style rifles. At one point, the group, still a religious organization, came in possession of a Mi-17 transport helicopter, smuggling it into Japan piecemeal. The group decided to begin focusing on certain chemicals to achieve their stated goal of destruction. They began running precursor tests involving a number of different deadly toxins. Aforementioned, a large amount of the testing for the chemical agents took place in Banjawan Station, Western Australia, which the group had purchased in the lead up to their most infamous incident. Mass graves of sheep bones were found buried near the property, showing that they had used local animals as lab rats for the sarin and anthrax they were making. Interestingly enough, a seismic event, alongside the presence of a massive fireball, occurred south of the station in the years the property was operational as a site for OMU. This incident, and the presence of a number of ex-Soviet nuclear scientists, alongside the group actively seeking out uranium from the surrounding area, hints at the possibility that they may have engineered a nuclear weapon, but this is just a theory. Their first attempt took place in Komedo, East Tokyo. They sprayed liquid anthrax from a cooling tower for a period of 24 hours. This wasn't successful. The group's scientists had synthesized the wrong strain of anthrax, a non-lethal, at least to humans, pathogen. The only ill effects was a foul odor and the death of pets nearby. Another case relevant is the incident in Matsumoto. As the group gained notoriety, it was impossible for them to set up in other prefectures, and specifically in Matsumoto, where they received pushback from not only the residents, but judges who sought legal action in the prefecture. Knowing this, OMU devised a plan to not only take out their biggest roadblock in the area, but to also test the efficacy of one of their newly discovered chemicals. What is sarin? Sarin is a volatile liquid like water that turns into gas easily at room temperature. How does it work? Primarily through inhalation. You breathe in the vapor, your lungs constrict, and you foam at the mouth, and then you suffocate and you die. On the night of June 27, 1994, members of the cult arrived in the Matsumoto prefecture, bringing with them a specially designed refrigerator truck, which had the capability to release an aerosolized form of sarin gas. This is exactly what they did, leading to 8 deaths. In the aftermath of this event, the police focused on Yoshiyuki Kono, whose wife fell ill from the sarin attack. The police discovered a large amount of pesticide in his residence, and he was subsequently blamed for manufacturing and spreading the chemical, yet again leading to the emboldening of the group and no legal consequences. Apocalypse. This is the end. The walls are closing in. The police are aware of what we've done. Our window is closing. We must act now to ensure our survival. These words most likely echoed through OMU's headquarters on the dawn of this peaceful March morning. And these words were just as powerful as the weapons they had just spent the last 5 years procuring. And as due to these words uttered, 10 men from the group are deployed across multiple train stations to enact their benevolent leader's final will. The 10 men are segmented into groups of 2. 1 sprayer and 1 driver. The sprayer carried 2 items: plastic bag full of the compound sarin, wrapped in a popular newspaper, alongside a sharpened umbrella, with which to puncture the bag and release the deadly gas on enclosed trays. At preordained times, the sprayer would place the bag on the floor and puncture it with the umbrella. Sprayer's name was by design. The name sounds like a profession, like they were technicians, but they were not. This fits with the scientific theme of the group, and by proxy, the sprayers were all made up of the intellectual elite of the group. Among them were Ikkyo Hayashi, Kenichi Hirose, Toro Toyoda, Masato Yokoyama, and Yasuo Hayashi, which besides the man who orchestrated this attack, had the single most impact on the unfolding of these events. If the sprayers had been chosen on their intellectual prowess, the drivers were selected based on the complete opposite: their loyalty and their brutality. The drivers were the cold secret police, their Stasi. The job of driver sounds unassuming, but there was an unspoken agreement between the leader and the drivers, not only to ensure that the sprayers arrived and extracted, but also did not back out. The sprayers knew this, pairing their feverish devotion with a layer of fear. Many of the drivers had already taken lives, be it their enemies or own members of the group, showing that they would not accept failure. Among the drivers are Katsuya Takahashi, Koichi Kitamura, Shigeru Sugimoto, Kiyotaka Tonozaki, and Tomomitsu Nimi, leader of the secret police and the group's most prolific killer. 6 a.m. Departure. The 5 sprayers and 5 drivers depart from their headquarters in Shibuya. Visiting a local store, they purchase newspapers from Akahata, Japan's Communist Party, and Saikyo Shimbun, which is owned by a Buddhist organization. 7:30 to 7:50, positioning. The plan is to have a number of trains converge upon the government district at this center point, all carrying the deadly gas, in order to potentially destroy Japan's government by killing all of the important employees and shutting the entire prefecture down. Kenichi Hirose arrives at Ikeburo, boarding A777M. In the meantime, at Shinjuku Station, Toro Toyoda arrives. Next is Masato Yokoyama at Nakamaguro Station. He boards Hibiya Line Train B711T. Next is Ikkyo Hayashi at Kitasenju. And last is Yasuo Hayashi at Ueno Station. But what made him so important? Yasuo was by all means an outsider to OMU, a vagrant who wandered the land in search of spiritual guidance, only feeling whole when joining OMU Shinrikyo. But he was not whole. Knowing his outsider presence, it urged him to take more responsibility and bear more work in the group to prove himself to Shoko. As mentioned before, he apparently had the most impact out of all the members who took part. mainly due to his willingness to prove. Everyone else in the group took with them 2 packets. Yasuo elected to take 3 packets of sarin. He also spent countless hours perfecting his technique of puncturing the bags. He is calm. He places the bundle on the floor after boarding the 3rd car. He, unlike the others, hasn't got a shred of fear visible on his person. He's sitting dead still, allowing the sea of commuters to flow over him, silently guarding the key to his acceptance and his place in history. "7:45 to 8 a.m. Final. It's at this point in the day that all 5 men begin boarding their respective trains. There is no turning back. The first puncture, Ikkyo Hayashi. He punctured only one of the 2 packets, hesitating after seeing the amount of people in the carriage. Next is Toru Toyota, releasing 2 packages as the train was leaving Abisu station. Next is Yasuo Hayashi, releasing 3 of his packets. Next was Masato Yokoyama. He failed to puncture a packet properly. And lastly is Kenichi Hirose. He punctured both packets. On Yasuo's train, the effects were felt immediately. People began to collapse as soon as the packets were punctured, with 4 dying on the train. He released all 3 packets, resulting in the highest amount of fatalities throughout the incident's timeline of events. Exacerbating this was a passenger who, upon noticing the apparatus, assumed it was a piece of garbage, kicking it off the train and onto the busy platform. Gas filled the station and killed 4 instantly. From Yasuo's actions, there was 8 fatalities and over 2,400 injuries. On Ikkyo's train, there were less deaths, but this isn't due to his hesitancy. It's due to an act of selflessness from 2 subway workers who elected to remove the package, and in doing so, lost their lives. Ikkyo's actions led to 2 fatalities and 231 injuries. Next is Toru Toyota. He killed 1 and injured 532. The amount of injuries was high, as the train was not stopped after the puncturing occurred, trapping hundreds of the commuters with the gas. Kenichi Hirose killed 1 and injured 358. He released the gas successfully, but splashed himself in the process. The fatality count was lowered as the train wasn't as crowded and the passengers opened the windows quickly in response. Lastly is Makoto Yokoyama, 0 fatalities and less than 200 injuries. Due to the fact that Yokoyama failed to puncture his packets, the gas released so slowly the train actually travelled all the way to the end of the line and back again. The 200 injuries were mostly mild to moderate, making this the least damaging of the 5 attacks. The final toll from all these actions was 13 deaths and 6,250 injuries. "8 to 8:30 a.m. Escape. After the sprays had left their packages on the train, they departed at the nearest train station, allowing the train to go on and expose more people to the gas. As stated before, each sprayer had a driver waiting for them at this exit point. Most teams drove directly back to the cult's compound in Kamakashiki to report to Asahara, but their journeys varied slightly. Ikkyo Hayashi exited at Shin Ochonomitsu. He was picked up by Nimi. The pair returned to the Shibuya headquarters, and ironically, he would save someone's life immediately after the attack. Toru Toyota was driven by Katsuya Takahashi. Toru exited at Abisu Station, being picked up mere minutes after the attack had occurred. Yasuo Hayashi was next. He was picked up by Shigeo Sugimoto. Yasuo stayed on the train after dropping his packets to observe and ensure the spread. He was picked up outside Ueno, and they drove back to the Kamakashiki compound. Masato Yokoyama was picked up by Kiyotaka Tonozaki at Yotsuya Station. Yokoyama was apparently silent on their journey back to the compound. he didn't suffer the immediate reprimanding that Hirose did. Lastly is Kenichi Hirose. He was picked up by Koichi Kitamura. This was the most chaotic escape out of the 5. As stated before, he'd accidentally splashed some sarin on himself during the act of puncturing the bags. By the time he exited the station, he was shaking uncontrollably and couldn't speak. Koichi realized something was very wrong. Instead of driving to the compound, he made a detour to a cult-affiliated hospital. But the staff had no knowledge of the attack, and therefore were of no help. Kitamura then had to drive to OM's headquarters in Shibuya, where Ikkyo Hayashi was already present, administering pralidoxime, saving him from the sarin's toxicity. (8 a.m. through 10 a.m. Chaos. Following the attacks, an immediate relief effort was mounted by emergency responders and the Japanese government. 8:09 a.m. The first calls are coming through to the Tokyo Fire Department. Be it from commuters or workers, the confusion remains the same. Reports state that passengers are foaming at the mouth and suffering from seizures. 8:16 a.m. The Tokyo Fire Department contacts St. Luke's International, warning of a gas explosion and a mass casualty event. They have yet to learn any details on the presence of a chemical, let alone what it is. 8:25 a.m. Walking wounded begin to arrive at the hospital, either by taxi or ambulance, quickly overwhelming St. Luke's. St. Luke's received 640 patients in the first hour after the attack. It is standard practice in mass casualty events that incoming patients are triaged and tagged based on the severity of their injuries. A large amount of incoming patients came by taxi, being quicker than the stretched-thin ambulance service. Arriving before the ambulances with no pre-notification, these patients quickly flooded the lobby of St. Luke's. A decision was made to abandon this system due to the sheer amount of patients. Adding to the chaos is the nature of the chemical. Sarin symptoms can onset shortly or long after exposure. Many of the people who taxied in sat down in the crowded waiting room and silently stopped breathing, meaning some who looked okay were minutes from death. 8:50 a.m. The Tokyo Fire Department incorrectly identifies the substance as acetonitrile, causing confusion, as the symptoms do not match that of acetonitrile poisoning. 9:30 a.m. Dr. Shikiki Hinohara, the director of St. Luke's Hospital, makes the decision to suspend all routine operations and surgeries, opening the chapel corridors to accept the influx of injured patients. Relief. 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. 11 a.m. The facts. Doctors from Shinshu University, who, surprisingly, had treated the victims from OM's attack at Matsumoto, see the breaking news. They immediately recognize the symptoms and inform St. Luke's. This is sarin. 12 p.m. The government calls military doctors from the jest-e to assist with treating the wounded. Hospitals, after receiving the information about the chemical, begin switching treatment protocols to administer atropine and pralidoxime, which are antidotes for nerve agents. Stockpiles of these antidotes begin to rapidly deplete and are rushed between hospitals. Later in the day, panic spreads, and thousands who weren't exposed flood hospitals due to psychosomatic symptoms caused by the shock of the event. The situation is now under control, but this leaves a question: who, what, and why? Punishment. March 21st, 1995 to 2018. A day after the attack, the nation was reeling. But no one had direct evidence it was OM. But they were officially the main suspects, so the police made a search warrant for a previously kidnapped notary, abducted in February. Using this, 2,500 riot police were deployed across a number of OM facilities. As the group were known for their gas attacks, the riot police brought with them canaries, as there weren't enough gas detectors for all the riot police. Through this, uncovering methods to the previous day's chaos, industrial production facilities for chemicals, countless weapons, and all the evidence that anyone would need for an open and shut case for all members who took part. The fate of the group is as follows. Shoko Asahara. Shoko was located in the raids, in his headquarters. He was hiding in a safe room hidden behind a false wall. He was found on his own, surrounded by 9.6 million yen. Apparently upon capture, he uttered, "Could I hold on to you? I can't see." He was sentenced to death in 2004 and would spend the next 14 years on death row. And on July 6, 2018, Shoko was executed by hanging at the Tokyo detention house. He had no final words. And for the rest of the group, Ikkyo Hayashi, life in prison. Kenichi Hirose, executed. Toro Toyota, executed. Masato Yokoyama, executed. Yasuo Hayashi, executed. All sprays who were executed on the same day. July 26, 2018. Out of all 5 drivers, Tomomitsu Nimi was the only one to be executed, also in 2018. The driver Katsuya Takahashi was on the run. Up until June 15th of 2012, he was captured and sentenced to life imprisonment. The rest were also sentenced to life imprisonment. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pretty hard video to make. I know there's a few inconsistencies, but I cannot be bothered to fix them. If you haven't seen part 1, please go watch part 1. It will be linked here at this end screen. Please subscribe.